Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen of the 128th District in Berks County. I firmly believe we are all stewards of the land and we must work to maintain the ecosystem for future generations. My guests for today's program have dedicated themselves entirely to protecting our forests, fields, wetlands, and waterways. Joining me today to discuss their efforts and update us specifically on the Green Hills Preserve are Dulcie Flaherty from the Montgomery County Lands Trust and Oliver Bass and Jack Stefford from the Natural Lands Trust. Welcome to the program. Appreciate you folks being here today. I'm confident that we're going to enjoy this discussion. As we were just sharing a few moments ago, my family and I recently acquired an agricultural property. And on that property are 7 springs. And my daughters and I were out for a walk yesterday and went across some of those areas where the springs are rising out. It's particularly true today with some of the snow melt that we've had. But my daughter pointed out to me all by herself that she thought that was an owl's nest over there. And we have heard great horned owls on the property talking back and forth to one another. Of course, I naturally cautioned her. Normally, you don't have to worry too much about birds, but a great horned owl can be a formidable bird. So why don't we start here? Tell us a little bit about your personal story, not just the Natural Lands Trust, but how did you get involved with the organization? Dulcie, can we start with you?
Certainly. I really came from a background of what we like to laughingly say, the works of man. And over 20 years ago, I was invited to help with the first Montgomery County program to preserve open space. We were emulating our sister county, Chester County. So we started working with the county government and municipalities to protect open space throughout Montgomery County. So I had almost 20 years, I have had almost 20 years of learning about the natural world and interacting with the people who make land use decisions and people who save natural resource areas. So it's been a really wonderful learning experience, and now we're affiliated. Montgomery County Lands Trust is affiliated with our larger regional sister Natural Lands Trust, so we have even a greater platform for doing that good work.
Wonderful. You're obviously very passionate about what you do. Your family, this is something you do as a team, or they enjoy this as well?
We did when the boys were younger. My husband and I live in western Montgomery County in a beautiful natural area where Natural Lands Trust has worked with Montgomery County Lands Trust to preserve over 2,000 acres of conservation easements and fee interest land. And our children lived in the natural world. It was outside their door. They grew up climbing rocks and playing in streams, and it shaped how they make decisions as young adults because they love and protect that environment.
Wonderful. Oliver, I'm sure you have your own personal story.
I do, and mine might be a little surprising to a lot of folks in the conservation field, but I grew up in Texas, and my father was in the lumber industry, owned a small sawmill, and I always say that I learned it from watching him. Because while he was cutting down trees, he was never happier than he was when he came home from a day out in the woods. And it was just, you know, you could tell the difference between a day in the office and a day in the woods for him. And he taught us that. I mean, I learned it from him, and when the opportunity came, it's been a little over 16 years ago, the opportunity came to work at Natural Lands Trust, and I jumped at it because taking care of places like the woodlands and the wetlands of southeastern Pennsylvania is something I care an awful lot about, and it's a beautiful area. When I moved here 20 plus years ago with my wife, I was really taken. I'd never been here before. I was really taken with the natural beauty of this area.
Jack, you're not from Texas.
Actually, I'm from Arkansas.
Close. Don't say Texarkana, Arkansas.
No, in my story, you know, we lived on the outskirts of town, and really, you know, catching crawdads in the local creek was where my appreciation for the natural world really began. And Northwest Arkansas, coincidentally, has almost the exact same growing season as southern Berks County. Exact same topography, similar soils, and so really coming here, you know, is home. You know, it feels very much the same. I have an undergraduate degree in agronomy, and then I farmed for about 10 years, came to Natural Lands Trust, and I've been with Natural Lands Trust for 26 years.
Northwest Arkansas, I think of the Ozarks, Buffalo River.
Oh,
that area.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, floated the Buffalo River many times.
I've done some traveling up there and have a great admiration for the Ozarks region. And I do see similarities between what we have in Berks County, both in watershed, water quality, as well as the agrarian emphasis that we have certainly in southern Berks County. It's very diverse. When you think about Berks County, some people immediately factory outlets, Reading. But if you're driving through the southern end of the county on the turnpike, you see nothing but farms once you pass the Morgantown exit.
And good farms.
Yeah, it's a very high quality soil. In any event, let's take this conversation a little different direction. People have your dad ran a sawmill, and we have a need for places to live. And we certainly have building trades and craftsmen and carpenters and what historically was a strong home building industry in Berks County. How do you balance that out in terms of protecting our natural resources and the need for an economy to grow and home building industry to flourish for anyone?
Well, I think balance is exactly the word, and it's something that Natural Lands Trust values, Montgomery County Lands Trust values, and I think in general the land conservation movement across the country. The key is really understanding what the natural resources are that you have, and then prioritizing the ones that are most important and doing your best to protect those. Because, as you said, we all need places to live, we all need places to shop, we need places to go to school. And so it's not about saying, we're here, let's close the door behind us and have no more. It's really about prioritizing and making sure that you're taking care of those natural resources that are most sensitive.
And it's a quality of life issue. You know, that we love to have good places to go shopping, excellent schools, and access to the out of doors, and the three of them go together. You know, that's what makes our region and where we live a special place. And really, at the end of the day, you know, we have kids that will have very good educations that can go anywhere in the United States or elsewhere that they would like for their jobs. And I'd like mine to stay here, but I'd like him to stay here because he loves it here, and he has access to those things, not because, you know, we lost a quality of life. And if we lose our good, clean streams, clean water, then we'll have lost what keeps us here.
And the other thing I think it's really important for folks to understand is conservationists like Natural Lands Trust folks are not anti-growth. We think it's important for people to make thoughtful decisions on how we place that growth, where we place that growth, how we arrange that growth, and what it looks like. Because if we do growth in a thoughtful way, then we can save the natural resources that Jack and Oliver stressed are important for quality of life, for economic development, because we know green, healthy, connected communities are places where business wants to locate and people want to stay.
Well stated. I believe in reading through some of your literature, the genesis of the organization dates back to the 50s. Could someone illumine a little bit on how it all started?
It began with a group of volunteers back in the early 50s in Philadelphia who were all very interested in birds, and in particular a guy by the name of Austin Jenkins, who is our founder. And Austin was an accountant, oddly enough, but he had recently got into bird watching. His daughter, who likes to say that he did it because he was trying to find a way to get away from the screaming kids from time to time. So his wife had gotten him interested in birding, and they had taken some classes. And they had fallen in love with a place called the Tinicum Marshes, which is located
at
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And at the time, there was a plan by Shell Oil to take dredging material from the Schuylkill and fill those marshes, which would have been devastating to what is really world-class bird habitat. And so Austin and some of his friends got together, and they managed to convince Shell and the city of Philadelphia to change their plans and preserved the land. And it is, as you said, now today the John Hines National Wildlife Refuge. And that was the genesis of the organization. So from that little volunteer group came what is now the region's largest nonprofit land conservation organization and one of the largest in the country. And one of the things that's so fascinating about it is that Austin, because it was in the early 50s and land conservation was still relatively new, he became one of the go-to people, one of the experts. And so when we look back over those 60 years since the founding, we see his fingerprints on 6 different national wildlife refuges, the beginnings of the national park system in Costa Rica, places in South Carolina, all up and down the East Coast, where people called in Austin and said, "Help us." So this is a guy who was just incredibly passionate and figured out how to make it work, and his fingerprints are all over the organization still today.
I have to admit that I get my best view of the marsh when I'm coming back in from a flight, getting ready to land at Philadelphia International Airport, and I've not been in the marshes to explore or to birdwatch or anything alike, but I admire them from I-95. I believe I saw a sign up I-95 there. My mother lives in South Philadelphia also, so I have occasion to go in and out of that area. Takes a lot of money to acquire agriculture, I guess, conservation easements or outright purchases or run an organization. What are the sources of your funding?
Township, county, state, and foundations. And it depends upon, where it is and what the property is, but those are the primary sources of funding for acquisitions. So really, the right property to be conserved is the most important, and it's a matter of wading through the grants and generating the interest. When we sit down with a map, for instance, not every place should be conserved, and so when we sit down with a map and look at something that's on an exceptional value or high quality creek, that makes a difference. If it's adjacent to other protected lands, that makes a difference. And so we look for the funding from those primary sources.
The other thing that's very important is the people involved. Oliver mentioned Alston Jenkins. It's the folks involved. We have lots of donors that will give us $10, donors that will give us $12, donors that will give us $1 million. It's getting people involved and allowing people to be part of the protection of the places that they love. So it's really balancing that, and you as a public official know what stimulates the choices that you make as elected officials are what you hear on the ground. And if your people are saying these places are special to us, we want to protect them, that's how we get public money.
Sometimes I'm more thrilled to hear about a $25 donation from a widow woman who could least afford it, but her passion and her heart was to participate in the mission of the organization. I remember one time someone I was involved with an organization, they sent a $7.89 check, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know if that was the only thing that was left in their checking account or what. But anyway, our own backyard, southern Berks County, there's some treasures there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your preservation project there?
It's a great preservation project.
It is our very first nature preserve in Berks County. Natural Lands Trust actually owns 42 properties throughout eastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey. It's a total of about 22,000 acres. And it's one of the things that makes the organization a little bit unique, in that we have been dedicated to owning land for several decades and then being good stewards of that land. Most of those properties are in southeastern Pennsylvania, in Chester, Montgomery County, Bucks County, Delaware. We have a new preserve called the Green Hills Preserve in Berks County that is really a gem. It's 168 acres, located very near I-176. And Jack here is the guy who's responsible for making it happen.
Well, it was identified. It's on the banks of the Allegheny Creek, which is a stock trout stream. The stock trout stream doesn't run through Green Hills, but the Allegheny Creek flows through the Green Hills Preserve, and it's a wonderful mix of rolling landscape and woods and hills that basically the landscape that we love and cherish in southern Berks County. And identified some critical wildlife habitat. And then set out to see if we could raise the funding. And in this case, 7 different sources of funding from the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, Berks County Conservancy, the Open Space Institute, and a number of others, the Wyomissing Foundation. Really, every entity pulled together enough funding to help with that purchase. And so we were lucky enough to pull it off.
And importantly, when I say nature preserve, I think sometimes people think, well, that's a place that you set aside and you protect it from people. And that's not what we're about. Green Hills is open to the public 7 days a week, free of charge during daylight hours, as are the vast majority of our nature preserves. And it's something that's really important to us. And aside from actually saving land, preserving open space, and taking care of it, managing it, we also think connecting people to nature and giving those opportunities for people to get outside is really important. So, right now we have a temporary parking lot at Green Hills, and we're working towards formalizing that. And we've got some new trails. We've had some volunteers out not long ago helping us establish a new trail through some woodlands there. So there's already a great opportunity for people to go out and take a hike, enjoy nature, just spend family time together. And it's a great resource.
Maybe once we get off camera, I'll get some tips on exactly how to cut trails out properly, since I'm in the middle of it myself right now on our property. Well, let's take a quick break. Legislative report will return in just a moment.
Did you know that the Pennsylvania Farm Show's history goes all the way back to 1851? Originally organized as a state fair by the Pennsylvania Agricultural Society, it was discontinued in 1899. It wasn't until 1916 that Charles Patton, the Pennsylvania Secretary of Agriculture, worked with others to develop a new agricultural fair which debuted in January 1917. It was in 1925 that the roots were laid for the farm show that we know today. The show had grown so large that 40,000 attendees were traveling to various sites all around Harrisburg. During this year, the Pennsylvania State Department of Agriculture took control of the event, and the legislature had decided to appropriate money that gave birth to the farm show complex. Finally, in 1931, the main exhibition building opened and welcomed 150,000 visitors to the show that year. Over the years, the farm show has continued to grow. Various events showcasing animals, products, and skills were added to the event. The farm show complex has also continued to grow, with more buildings and arenas being added over the years. The count stands at 24 acres inside 11 buildings and 3 arenas. Today, the show hosts approximately 6,000 animals, 10,000 competitive exhibits, and 300 commercial exhibits, along with over 500,000 visitors. Since the doors to the main exhibition building opened, the farm show has become the world's biggest indoor agricultural event. Now you know.
Did you know that on October 4th, 1911, the statues that greet visitors in front of the state capitol building in Harrisburg were dedicated to the citizens of the Commonwealth? In 1902, George Gray Bernard was commissioned to design the figures that embellished the front of the Capitol building. During the installation period, Bernard explained to the General Assembly what each sculpture symbolized. The Southern group, titled The Burden of Life, depicts the story of Adam and Eve followed by the fall of man in the forms of despair. The Northern group, titled Love and Labor, depicts male and female figures reaping fruits of labor and advances to a new Adam and Eve who gaze westward into the future. Recently, both sculptures underwent restoration to prevent further deterioration from their natural beauty. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. Today we're discussing land preservation efforts with members of some area lands trust groups. We were talking about Berks County. Let's continue that discussion. My wife and I and our daughters, we chose Berks County. Quality of life, natural beauty, and we live on an agricultural property. Schuylkill Highlands. I think we're within a stone's throw of some areas that I know the trust has looked at. Let's discuss the Highlands of the Schuylkill area.
The Schuylkill Highlands is an amazing geography. It is part of the confluence, the overlapping of the Schuylkill River watershed and the National Highlands that go all the way from Connecticut all the way down to Maryland. It is rich in natural resources, especially when you look at water resources. It has great forests, and it is a place where you can find a contiguous forest that is the largest one, the Hopewell Big Woods Forest, from Washington to New York. So it's part of a system, and Berks County sits right at the heart of that system that really brings drinking water to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
To Montgomery County, right where you live.
Well, absolutely. It's what we have in common. The Schuylkill Highlands is something that brings us together because it's in Lehigh, it's in Berks, in Montgomery, and Chester. It's a reason for us to look as an environmental community that's connected, and the impacts from one community to another are important.
And French Creek kind of sits in the middle of what you've just described there, and you've had projects in and around French Creek?
Yes. Well, first off, Natural Lands Trust owns a preserve in the Chester County side of the border, our Crow's Nest Preserve, which is bordered by French Creek.
Hundreds of acres.
Several hundred acres.
600.
600.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. But in addition, on the Berks County side, the Green Hills Preserve, and then French Creek State Park, Birdsboro Waters, and a number of the larger land holdings. And we've recently been given a grant by the William Penn Foundation to focus some efforts in the French, primarily in the French and the Hay Creek watersheds. That would include Natural Lands Trust and Berks County Conservancy and a number of other conservancies. And we've got several active projects which we hope in the not too distant future will result in settlements for additional land conservation.
Locally, there's been some conversation about what you have your eyes on there, and I can remember a township manager saying, that would probably be a pretty good use because given the steepness of the slopes there, it's not a very good candidate for even building on, and if someone were to get a house up there, then access to emergency vehicles would be problematic if there was a need for EMS or the fire department. Not far from our house, there's an eagle's nest, and it would be in the Schuylkill Highlands area, and I saw 2 eagles in the southern end of the county, relatively proximal to French Creek. We've got some great horned owls, and I know this organization, at least from its beginning, had a focus on habitat and birds. That's enduring. We're talking about animal habitat when we talk about preserving, as well as access for people to enjoy, to visit, and to hike.
That's absolutely right, and it's all of those things. It's space for our wildlife, birds, mammals, aquatic wildlife as well, and it is it's a place for us to recreate, and all of that fits together in a system. And it's only when that entire system is healthy that we get the quality of life benefits that Jack mentioned earlier, that we get the economic benefits that Dulcie referenced. And, that's why it takes such concerted effort and some real planning to make these things work. When we go out and identify a property to preserve, and Jack does his magic, which he really does, it's the result of an awful lot of thought and consideration that goes in first. We are looking at a landscape like the Schuylkill Highlands, and we're identifying those specific areas that might be important, and then we're doing the outreach to landowners. And it all begins there. It all begins with the landowners. I love hearing the stories about the landowners that we work with because, these are folks who in many cases could be making a whole lot more if they answered a different call. If they made a different decision about their lands, they might make more in most cases, and in some cases they're very, very generous. And that's really where it begins. It's a willing landowner, a landowner who loves their land and wants to see the right thing done with it.
The other thing that's really important is everyone is part of this solution. Sometimes we can buy land, as Oliver and Jack have talked about, where we have a nature preserve. But sometimes we just buy easements where we just protect it from subdivision and further development. And then we can steward it. We don't even have to own it to have good stewards of the land. You're talking about what you and your children do. Mm-hmm. You're stewards of the land. Everyone can participate in helping Mother Nature. Everyone can take care of your environment, whether you own the land or you don't. And that's an important message that we're trying to share with people because people feel that in their blood and they can take part.
Yeah, I'm trying to inculcate it in my children, and there hasn't been many days where I could take the 10-month-old out for a walk. I was going through foot-deep snow the other day, and I said, my wife was a little reluctant, well, just bundle her up. I'll only have her outside there for 15, 20 minutes, so she finally did it. We're going to experience nature together. The whole time we were walking, our cat was following us, and she kept looking down at the cat. There's the cat. I'm trying to point other things out to her. Yeah, so we certainly enjoy the
They're starting them young. That's what we like.
The
Absolutely right.
outdoors is a family. My one daughter, Hannah, she's got a particularly good eye for spotting things. I almost think it's instinctive. She's out there with binoculars, but she'll be the first to see the woodpecker out there. And she was the first to spot, not on our property, the eagle's nest, and she was the first to locate what she thought was the owl's nest out there in the wild. But in any event, what does the future look like in terms of Berks County, what you're doing there? You're in southeast Pennsylvania and parts of New Jersey. Do you look to expand the horizon of the counties that you're in, or amplify in any particular area? The Highlands, is that your focal point in the future?
Well, I mean, I think Berks County plays a particular role because of the William Penn Foundation funded project that Jack mentioned earlier. And we've also been getting more involved in the Poconos in northeast Pennsylvania in recent years. And there's some great opportunities right now in that area. At the same time, we're always very mindful to not bite off more than we can chew as an organization. So, you know, we want to stay in a geographic area that we can manage and where we can really have an impact and not, you know, spread ourselves too thin.
We're tenacious optimists. And we're also patient because things change and we adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
This question maybe is a little bit of a curveball. What was the biggest challenge you faced, either in acquisition, public education, some municipal authority? Certainly no state legislator. You've never had a problem with them. Okay, and you overcame that challenge. Success story.
Well, from my side with acquisitions, it's the immediate assumption that conservation can't be a part of the solution. That there are many landowners who immediately assume that selling to a developer is their only answer, and it's not. It may at the end of the day be the answer, but it's certainly worth giving a conservation organization a call to see if conservation can be part of the solution, whatever that solution may be.
If I'm a developer and I'm looking for ground, it seems to me, and I'm just thinking out loud, that I would want to build in an area there's a high quality of life, where there was perhaps easements that already existed, and conservation and hiking and natural trails. So can this go hand in hand?
Absolutely. It's economic development. If you build in a place that's been planned for growth, and you build there, your values are up, your people are happier, and Mother Nature smiles at you.
And businesses want to be in those places too. I mean, when you give, particularly nowadays, when you have workers who are so incredibly mobile, and companies can make a lot of choices about where they locate, give them the option of green space and a great quality of life for their employees, that's where they want to be.
Briefly, where are we at as compared to the rest of the country? I know agriculture conservation easements over 65,000 acres in Berks County, certainly one of the national leaders. In terms of land preservation, how do we stack up in southeast Pennsylvania?
We rank way up there, actually. The conservation ethic has been in the bones of this region for a very long time. And you know, in terms of the amount of money that is invested, which is one way of measuring, it's not the only, but one way, of voter interest, public support for that, we are among the leaders in the country. We also have more land trusts than most parts of the country. And again, that's a reflection of how much interest there is.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen. If you need assistance with any state matter, please feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. The address and number will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.